Welcome to the EMEA Recruitment Podcast, brought to you in partnership with our friends at Operation Smile. To support our goal of creating 100 new smiles, please donate to Operation Smile at emearecruitment.com/operation-smile. In this episode, we speak to Dominique Kull, the co-founder and CEO of SGProtein in Singapore. Dominique explains why he took the leap to launch a new business during the pandemic.
So, hello everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the EMEA Recruitment Podcast in partnership with our good friends over at Operation Smile. So, as my colleague Rose mentioned, we're delighted to welcome Dominique onto the podcast today. So, hopefully you can hear me okay?
Hi, Paul. Yes, I can hear you well.
Perfect. So before we go into the questions, whereabouts are you today, Dominique?
I'm speaking here out of Singapore at the moment. So I'm based in Singapore and I have been here for the last couple of years.
Well, that's it. I know you've had quite a broad range of experience on the geographical side of things across obviously Singapore, Switzerland, the US, Indonesia, and clearly I don't think we can have a conversation on the podcast at this moment in time without talking about the whole sort of COVID situation. I mean, we are recording this in October 2021, so I know, it feels like we're past the worst of it. But one of the things I try to do is put a bit of a positive slant on it and ask the guests, what they maybe learned about themselves over the last 20 months or so.
So, I remember the last time we talked, we were expecting by the time we do the podcast, we are all over and there is no more COVID. Things came a bit different, but so I think that's how it is. And the thing for me, what I really learned is don't be fixed on what's coming. I mean, we can't predict the future. Take it as it comes and make the best out of it, because there's so many things out there which we can't influence. Try to stay within the field where you can have an influence and change it when you can, and don't bother or don't occupy yourself with things which you can't really influence or change. Such a thing like COVID or for me, it was a very interesting thing. I used to be every week in a plane, and I expected my life will always be that I be every week in a plane. And now I have been for 2 years, have not been moving around outside of Singapore, which is a very small island if you stay here for 2 years. But for me, it was actually a very positive experience. I have 2 little girls, and I could spend much more time with them. And with the new ways of work, gave me a new ways how I interact as well with the family. So see the positive sides.
That is a really interesting answer to the question, because I think, and this will lead on quite nicely to some of the questions that will come up in the podcast, because I know you've had a really interesting period setting up your own business over this time. But I think I just wanted to go back to something you mentioned there about, only really worrying about what you can influence and what you can control, because I know this is something that is in most management books that people read, but it's harder to put into practice than it is in reality. So, I mean, is it something that you naturally find quite easy to do, or do you have to stop yourself if you find yourself going into that mode of maybe a bit of negative thinking and a bit of overthinking things? I mean, is it something you've had to work at over the years?
I think I would be lying if I'm saying, or I would not be human if I'm saying it never happens to me to think negatively or try not. But it's something I just learned over my life, that there are always, if you just look up the mountain is always very high. But if you take it step by step, it's much easier. And really, it's if you cautiously do that all the time, you learn and you get better in it, and that's how I do it. Really take it, because you mentioned I've been working all around the world, and every time I move places, you step into something unknown, and you could spend hours and hours about just thinking about what you don't know, but always taking it from a positive side frees up your mind. And the same thing I tend to do with difficult situation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, where do you think the positive mindset you have comes from? Because I know, anybody who looks on your LinkedIn profile will see it's something, it runs through the LinkedIn profile, the positive approach, the positive approach to networking, to business, and to life in general. I mean, is this something that you feel you got from your parents or your network or mentors that you've been working with?
I think I was lucky in life, I can say, and but I also was searching my luck all the time. It's not something that was always just coming to me, but I was always looking for it. I would call myself very curious. That can also have a negative side. I can be quite bored, or as I said, I could have never imagined staying 2 years at the same place. That's also I changed. I stay now 2 years at the same place without flying. So I started my own company. That's where I get the changes in again. But throughout my life and my career, I was fortunate enough to always have leaders, bosses, colleagues who showed me the way, and who gave very positive impact or very positive influence. And I could pick up from them, and that created my mindset. So I think it's a combination of a lot of factors. Having been growing up in couldn't be thankful enough to my family, how they raised me. Had all the chances in my life coming along, and having had great mentors along the way.
Oh, that's excellent. And obviously, you mentioned about the setting up of this new business and new venture. I mean, clearly, it's something that we're very keen to hear more about. So you've fairly recently set up SGProtein, co-founder, CEO of the business in the last few months. So I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about the business and how it all came around, really.
No, very much. Yeah. So I have been in the last couple of years. I was involved here in Singapore in the food innovation space, and some of you might have heard of, wherever you listen in from the world, you see the trend on plant-based meat alternatives is becoming a big topic in the US, in Europe. It has tremendous market growth, and it's also something that picked up here in Asia. However, when I saw it and looked at the market, I saw that there is was kind of like a glass ceiling. I saw that for companies to really grow from small companies to break through, and one of the things is being an engineer by training. Maybe I have to say here, I saw that many are hindered by building professional manufacturing capacities, and because you need to have high capacities to be commercially viable. And I was lucky. I found two co-founders, which we were sitting together, and we discussed that problem. How can it overcome? How can the food industry, can we help companies to grow further and overcome that issue between the market is not yet big enough for each company, or shall they build a big plant, or building a big plant and hoping that the market is growing? So that's where we decided to build or found the company SGProtein as a contract manufacturer for plant-based meat alternatives, to help either companies coming in from overseas to be able to manufacture here locally, to have an easy start, an asset light start by using SGProtein as their manufacturing partner, or for startups who actually have good products, good branding, but don't have the bandwidth to also build up an excellent manufacturing, which when it comes to food is very important. We talk about food safety, we talk about the health of people. So how the food is manufactured need to be done professional. So that's how the idea came about, and probably thanks to COVID on my side, I spent a lot of time here with my friends in Singapore. We talked it through, and then decided to found SGProtein, and we are now in the making. We're still building up our manufacturing site, but we will be commercially operational by the end of the year. And so the last couple of months have been very intense between building up a manufacturing, building up actually a company, At the same time, finding customers for our manufacturing side, and building up a new team from the ground. I think when starting a company, from getting it from 0 to 1, getting it really started and moving, it's very intense, but it's also very fulfilling when you see how something is evolving.
I mean, there's a lot in there that is really interesting, to be honest. I mean, one of the first things you mentioned was about the lucky situation you found yourself in with the other two co-founders, and the business sort of grew from those initial meetings. And I mean, I always find it quite interesting, because people who either go set up their own business or who have very successful careers will refer to these types of meetings as lucky. But I suppose the reality is that a lot of people have these kind of meetings, but it's actually what they do with the meetings and how they move it forward that is the key thing, So I think a lot of people, will probably have those opportunities, but they don't necessarily see them, or they don't act on them. Whereas obviously for yourself, I mean, and the other two co-founders, it's great that, you were sitting down, you realized there was a gap in the market for this kind of business, and you didn't let the challenge of COVID stop you doing that, because I guess it would have been quite easy for you to say, well, there'd be easier times to set up a business, and in the middle of this pandemic. I mean, was it? Were you ever a bit worried about setting up over this time, or?
I think when building up a business, you're worried anyhow all the time, and I think it's healthy if you would not be worried. I think you are made to become a failure as a business, because you always have to think, oh, what did I miss? Have I considered this? Have I considered that? So worrying can be a positive thing, but I think you mentioned it quite well with the luck. Has luck found me, or have I found the luck? And with these conversations, I like to connect with people. I like to have interesting conversation, discussion, and we discussed just about this market. And after a while, I came to the point to say, look, either I'm going to try it, or in 5 years' time, I'm looking back and say, oh, I would have had the same idea. But it's always, and I think that's probably a bit of a mantra I had all the time in my life, is my biggest worry is that I look back in 5 years' time or in 20 years' time and say I should have done. That's my biggest worry. It's not the worry that I look back and say, oh, I should have done it differently. But I don't want to have the feeling that when I get retired, or when looking back, say, oh, I should have had that idea. And that's something I learned very, very early in my life, is try it, do it. And that was actually when I was 20, I left. I'm originally from Switzerland. And there was a reason that I left Switzerland, because I was worried that in 5 or 10 years' time, I would look back and say, I should have gone. And I saw that with whomever I talked to was all older than me, who had talked about business, about all private things. I realized I never came across anybody who said, oh, I should not have done it. But everybody said, I should have done it. They always felt they missed out on something they have not done. But I hardly heard anybody being negative on something they have done. They said, I've done it, it didn't work out, and I changed it.
Hi, everybody. It's Paul Toms here. I hope that you're well and you're enjoying the podcast so far. Thank you once again for your continued support listening to the podcast. I just wanted to break into the recording to talk to you about a really exciting new partnership that EMEA Recruitment has along with Operation Smile. And as founder of EMEA Recruitment, it's an honour and a privilege to announce this partnership. Personally, I was born with a cleft lip and palate, so the mission of Operation Smile is something that I have a strong personal connection with. It's not an understatement to say that the dentists and surgeons that helped me were life changers. It's not only about the actual operations that take place, the support and care post and pre-operation are beyond value, and from personal experience I can only say that I'd not be the confident, happy person I am today without this support. I want to help children experience the support and care and skill that I experienced on my journey, and hope that we can do this along with Operation Smile. Every 3 minutes, a child is born with a cleft lip or cleft palate, and the mission of Operation Smile is to provide help and support to these children through providing 6,000 medical volunteers across 80 countries who are dedicated to help these children with facial conditions, most commonly cleft lip and cleft palate. More than 200,000 children are born with a cleft every year, and they are often unable to speak, eat, socialise or even smile. However, it can take as little as 45 minutes and cost just €180 or 182 francs for Operation Smile to provide the child with life-changing surgery. Now, in partnership with Operation Smile, EMEA Recruitment is raising valuable funds and aiming to create 100 new smiles to support the organisation to provide free surgeries for children and young adults all over the world. Please help us by donating through the link in the bio, or get in touch to see how your company can help get involved too. For the moment, I'll leave you to carry on listening to the rest of the podcast, but if there's anything I can do in terms of answering any questions or finding out how you can help and support EMEA Recruitment and Operation Smile, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of the podcast. No, it's again really, really interesting, and the positive mindset, and it is. There's a lot about taking risks or calculated risks, because as you say, you don't want to be in a situation when you approach retirement or the end of your life and think, I wish I'd have done that, wish I'd done the other thing, and you even if things don't work out, you always learn something from every move you make, really. But I suppose a big part of being able to do this is having supportive family, so are your family very supportive of your drive and entrepreneurialism? It sort of runs through the family blood as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I have to be very thankful, first of all, to my wife, who's supporting in that as well. I mean, you can imagine during already an uncertain time like COVID, deciding to leave the corporate career path and starting a business by yourself, that while having two smaller kids at home, that creates some uncertainty as well. And but the support was always, tremendously. And also my wife said, "Look, do it. If it doesn't work, you go back to a corporate world, or we will find other ways." And we had both. We are a working couple. She had her share of running her own company, decided then to go back to the corporate because for her personal reason that was a setup that worked better for her. So she was very, very supportive in that regard. But also, for example, my parents, they still live in Switzerland. They haven't seen their grandkids for 2 years because we can't travel. But there was not one time a comment or anything, "Oh, you should come back to Switzerland, you should do this." From day one, when I said, "Look, I start my own company," they said, "Great, how can we support?" So I think that's something, that was a given from the family side.
No, again, really interesting, because it sounds like you're surrounded by people with a positive mindset as well. I think again, it's something you read in a lot of management books to try and move yourself away from people who have got negative attitudes to things and can bring you down. But it sounds like you're almost a perfect example of what they talk about in these management books. So it's good to go through this with you on the podcast. So I mean, what are the plans for SGProtein? I know it's early days, but have you had a situation where you've actually said, "Well, this is where we'd like to be in 5 years," or something like that?
I think that's a very important point. When you set up a company, you should not just have, you need your immediate targets for the next month, for the next 6 months, but you need to have a long-term plan for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years. And for us, it's clear we're going to set up now this first manufacturing site here in Singapore, because Singapore is the biggest growing market in meat alternatives in Southeast Asia. But if you look over Southeast Asia, to be very frank, Singapore is not the market. We have 6 million people, where Southeast Asia, it's 800 million people. So our ambition is definitely Singapore as a starting point. But when markets are growing and picking up more in Southeast Asia, expanding it to other countries and build up several locations around Southeast Asia. And we definitely have the ambitions to become the go-to partner for meat alternative manufacturing in Southeast Asia.
Wow, that's a good, ambitious plan. So it's obviously everyone's going to be keeping an eye on the business now and see how you're getting on. So that's it. You've just made your plan public. So that's all good. So it's,
but that's honestly, you mentioned a good thing. Making a plan public helps to put up some pressure.
Yeah,
that's I have done it over and over again in my life. I sometimes tell myself, why am I doing that? But it helps me to put some pressure on. I have done it even with small goals. When I say, for example, on a personal level, I told my friends I'm going to run a marathon. They say, yeah, do you know how to run a marathon? Can you run that far? I said, not yet, but by the time I start, I will. And by making that public, there was also enough. I built my personal pressure up that I actually did it. So I think it's also good for the business to make some plans public. That keeps the pressure up.
Yeah. No, it's true, because I think, as you say, you need some of this positive pressure, because you can have the plans in your mind or with your co-founders, but to have other people aware of what you're trying to do, they're going to be keeping an eye on your on your website and your LinkedIn posts and all these types of things. So adds that extra bit of pressure from the public and the network that you have as well to see how everything is going. But I think it's a positive pressure as well for you to keep pushing in the right direction. And obviously, I mean, it's a great situation when you start a new business because you pretty much got a blank sheet of paper. The business can be anything you really want it to be in terms of the culture, the people, management style, and so on. And I mean, what we tend to find is people often use their experience to look at what the good things have been in their learnings and what the bad things have been in their learnings and try to focus on the good side of it. So I thought I'd ask you really what maybe on the side of the worst job you've maybe ever had and what you've learned from it and what you try to bring into your new business from that learning, really.
Maybe there are two positive. I wouldn't say I had a worse job, but I always over my career, when I reflect on jobs I've done and see where I had or where I felt like I didn't like it, was one part was definitely always when I had superiors where I felt I'm not able to thrive. They didn't give me a freedom of really creating something. So when I was micromanaged, that never worked for me. So I'm also learned. I tend to be a boss who actually is very give the right direction, but be very loose and feel people have to strive for it, have to aim for it, rather than giving everything in small pieces and tell them exactly what to do. So that's something where I felt how was it? Probably it's the harsh word to say imprisoned. When I was not able to do what I wanted to do, or when I felt I was not giving the power to do something, there was one part of a job, and the other part for me was for a while I had an office job, not much personal interaction with customers, with colleagues, the outside, really just thinking, and that's not me. I'm a very very interpersonal character, so I need to exchange. I need to have discussions. I want to see something. I want to create something. I want to see something developing. And if I don't have that, I'm not happy in my job. Or if I have done something and I feel that I have just done what somebody told me to do, rather than I can say, hey, that was an achievement. I was part of it, and there is some creativity and hard work from my side in there.
Mm-hmm. So, I guess given this experience you've had, is that something you're keen to build into the new company as well?
Yes, absolutely. For me, it's super important that, for me, every employee on every level of the company have to put in their thinking and can bring in input. So only if you have that learning mindset throughout the whole company, I think you can strive. If I could not imagine one job where somebody can come in and leave his brain at the door and does his job the whole day. So everybody should try to learn while doing his job, and actually feel every day, every week, walking out in the evening and say, hey, today I learned something new, I did something additional. And this mindset, I think, is important, and that everybody throughout an organization has the power, but also the pressure to change for a better in the company.
It sounds really the right idea, and it should be the right environment to attract great people to work in the business as well. I know obviously saying these things is often quite harder than putting it into practice, and I know you've had a lot of experience in managing and building teams over the years, so I thought this could lead on quite nicely just to asking you what you feel are the key steps that you need to take in order to have a really efficient and effective process of recruiting great people.
It's a very good question, and I think, yes, even if I have experience in recruiting and managing, I think the last 2 years, and then we come back a bit to COVID, actually, we all had to change, and we had to relearn. For example, I found, even though probably 2 years ago I would have said, we look for the outcome, and but many times in the past, the inputs were managed and not the outputs of people, and it's much harder today, I think, to recruit people, to find somebody who fits in a team, in regards when you not work. It's different if the whole team works in the same office, you see each other every day. I think you recruit differently as well than when your team is totally remote. You sometimes not even see the person, or you don't meet the person when you recruit them. How do you recruit the right person in regards that you can, because it takes a lot of trust level, and how do you build that trust when doing everything online and remotely? So I think the whole process on the recruitment side takes more time, but it also became even more, I emphasize even more than before, on personal level, on really making sure that the people I'm hiring are, for me, integrity is a very important part. I'm always feel technical skills we can learn, but if somebody is not if somebody lacks integrity, we have an issue. And it's not, I haven't found yet the golden standard, or I still find it always very, very challenging to decide, or to find out during the recruitment to how to ensure that somebody has the full integrity.
It's a big challenge. You mentioned there that the trust element is the key thing. I think that the reality is, it's always been important, even before COVID, whether you can trust somebody to hire them. But I think, especially now that, people are not together as much in person as much as they used to be, you've got to look at the outputs, and you have to trust that people are doing the right thing, and that their motivations and their hearts are in the right place, but it changes the recruitment process, it changes management style and so on, and again, it does come down a lot to what you've mentioned a few times in the relationship building and the personal connections. I think it's something that obviously you enjoy, and you are very strong at, but I think it's a challenge for the or at least what we see for the younger generation, because I think for I'm 43, and certainly, when I started doing this job, email was only just coming out, and you didn't have many other ways to communicate, other than phone calls, whereas now you have so many different ways of communication, whether it's email, WhatsApp, so many different apps, and that the art of communicating with people is getting a bit left behind, So do you have any maybe advice to people as to how they can practice becoming better at networking?
I think on networking, it's something you have to practice. And communicating. I think we have the beauty that we have a lot of, as you mentioned, when we started our careers, there was not so many ways of communicating and to network. And I think to really learn on networking, and it's important to put yourself out. And I think for a lot of leaders in the industry, it also has become differently, because when they used to just walk through the floor and shake hands left and right with the people once a week, we still have to do that, but we have to do it virtually. And the same comes a bit with networking with peers. We have to put ourselves out, use online platforms, and do things. For example, for me, we just talked about before, Paul, that this is the first time I do a podcast. Do I feel comfortable with it at the very beginning before we pass the record? Maybe not, but it's for me one way of networking. Maybe I'm not. I know a lot of people listening in now. With a few of you, maybe I have a conversation later because there's something which is interesting. So there's lots of different ways how you can network, and you just have to put yourself out there and get. Sometimes if there is a fear, get over that fear and then try it.
No, that's it. It is one of those things that I think if you like everything, if it puts you out of your comfort zone, you just got to start on a small scale and then just gradually build it up over time, because nothing will change if you automatically always resort to email or WhatsApp conversation. So it's just pushing forward and gradually moving in the right direction, I guess. Excuse me. So obviously, a bit of this is around technology that we're talking about, with the challenges of technology and using it in the right way. And clearly, BI and data is a big part of our lives now, and it's obviously going to increase in the future. So I just thought I'd ask you your own opinion of the impact of BI and data and how it might change and assist Singapore specifically, but probably more general, your business model in the future.
I think BI and data will have a huge impact especially in regards. If you look at our world, we see more and more data available, and when it comes to food, and I'm coming from the food manufacturing side. When we see new trends with business intelligence, we can pick up on trends much faster. It also has the downside. We need to be much more agile, and what is in today, maybe not in tomorrow anymore, but we have to pick up those things very, very early. Singapore obviously is a very data-driven economy already, and that's one thing we definitely, for our business, we will strive as well with. At the beginning, where it's about the setup the first couple of months, but then with the data, we want to make this will help us tremendously to make us more competitive, and actually we will need much less people on the shop floor, but can do much more automated things and make decisions, and for example, production plannings much better fitting to our market needs. So overall, the process become more and more efficient with the same setups as we're gonna have, and as well the quality data. One sample is when you can online measure today the output of how the product comes out. You can have ideal your so-called golden batch, and the processing data are automatically adjusted according to that, where before you needed to have an operator always looking at it and then adjust the machine according to that, where you always lose a couple of hours in between. That can be done instantly in the very near future, or sometimes it's happening already now.
I mean, do you think is there any concern on your side that people can get maybe a bit obsessed by analyzing data, and then it takes away from the relationship building, because I guess the thing we've been talking about a lot today is having strong interpersonal connections and networking, getting out there, meeting people. But then obviously behind data, it does move you away a little bit from that if you're analyzing lots of data to make your decisions. So, I mean, is there any concern you have that, you can almost overanalyze and miss and lose out on the relationship building?
I think that there is danger for or if you leave the relationship building out and the human intelligence out and just look at data, you will run into the wrong direction. And personally, I think to take a sample there, I found, meanwhile, again, in 2 years COVID, I find it quite funny to read about infection or how many infected people we have in every country. And people think they can analyze this data. It's useless because it depends always on so many other factors. How many tests per capita has somebody done? Who did they test? And what do you read out? So I think coming into the future, talking about data analytics and how to use data will actually require tremendous amount of personal engagement and personal discussion between people, because it doesn't help you just analyzing data. You have to understand what data is going to be analyzed and what does it lead to. And I think today in probably over half of the applications where we see on data analytics lead to wrong outcomes because of wrong data inputs or wrong judgment of the data inputs.
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, it's a challenging one, I think, for businesses, but also, for people in their personal lives and parents, because you see on the things like, I don't know if you've seen the Social Dilemma documentary, but I mean, Facebook and other websites can just tailor exactly what they want either you to see or your child to see. And it's, it's very, there are a lot of challenges there, but there's no doubt that if it's done in the right way, the information is used correctly and analyzed correctly, then it's a huge step forward for business and our personal lives, really. So,
For example, for me, on a hiring process is a good sample as well. Data can assist to data analytics can assist on shortlisting more candidates, or look at the wider pool of candidates and shortlisting them. But I'm very, very doubtful that you could do a hire without any personal connection. So it's the right combination on assisting to go through a bigger pool of people and having therefore probably a more interesting shortlisting of candidates. But then there's still so much interpersonal things that have to be right, which in my opinion cannot be taken just on data analytics.
No, it's very, very true. I mean, I think we see this in every field at the moment, how you've got to get that balance right to help make the right call on it, really. So no, it's very, very true. And I thought I'd just end the podcast with maybe a light-hearted, unusual question for you, Dominique. So obviously, as I mentioned at the start of the discussion, the podcast with us we're in partnership with the charity Operation Smile. So I thought I'd ask you to end on, what was the last thing that made you smile?
I'm a person who's always smiling. Before, when we had the camera on, we were smiling. But I think it's often the small things in life. I have to smile at. For example, I had lunch with my daughter, and she tried. Living in Singapore, but being Swiss, I always tried to learn her Swiss German, and we tried to explain funny words in Swiss German, which makes us a lot of laughs to find the meanings of these words and why is it that way. And so having this conversation with a 5-year-old made me a lot to laugh because it's a good mixture between English and German in the end.
Mm-hmm. That's it. And so you've got one of your daughters is 5, and how old is the other one? 3
and 5.
Wow. Okay. So sort of both young age, and so a lot. Hopefully they'll start seeing all the work you're doing, and the exciting things going around, and then maybe the future business leaders of the future, really.
Yeah, I hope I can. I think for me, it's important for them. It's really that they find their passion and that they can find something they love to do in life. That's personally what I want to give them on their way, is to that they find their own passion and always do something they love. Because then when they start doing something they love, they don't have to work anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great quote to end the podcast on. Yeah, that's it. You can find something you love, then it's not work anymore. So that's I think that's the best way we can conclude the podcast, really, Dominique, to be honest. That's it. Yeah. It's been awesome to have you as a guest on the podcast today. I've really found it really insightful. I know the network will take a lot from it as well. So I just thought I'd ask you, if any of the network wants to reach out to you, what's the best way they can do that?
I think it's through LinkedIn. That's the social media channel which I use the most. You can find me there under Dominique Kull and SGProtein. So would be love to connect, and always happy for a chat.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks, Dominique. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks, Paul, for having me.
Problem.
Thanks.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. If you'd like to reach out to Paul or myself, please feel free to send a connection through on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to listen to previous episodes of the podcast, you can find them all at our website, www.emearecruitment.eu.